What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here of the Desai Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, Desai, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of Desai Guys, Mr. Tad Desai. And Tad, we're still continuing on with our head coaching series, but we're jumping into a team that maybe you have a little bit more to contribute on. Not that you haven't contributed on the other three previous episodes, but this one I think could be...
haven't contributed. Oh my God.
I think this one just maybe will take it up another level for you because we're covering the Indianapolis Colts and their new hire in Shane Steichen. Like we sort of mentioned in every other episode so far, the past three, we are doing our new head coaching series. So in case you haven't listened to any of them, we're giving them a fantasy spin. So yeah, we are close to the end of June here. So July is when some leagues start to like kick into gear as far as like setting them up and figuring out draft dates. And pretty much that's your sign that's like, hey, let's start prepping for fantasy football. So that's why we got you covered with these three episodes here. We most recently did D'Amico Ryans of the Houston Texans. Prior to that, we did Jonathan Gannon of the Arizona Cardinals. And we kicked it off with Sean Payton of the Denver Broncos. So once again, don't stop listening to this episode. But after this episode, turn back and listen to the previous three episodes because I think you'll find some great nuggets there to help you with your fantasy football draft prep and just getting you all set for when the fantasy season kicks off in maybe a month and a half, like about 2 months roughly.
Like it's getting surprisingly close. Time
exactly.
has been flying.
100%. So
some people draft in late June. So like we are less than a month away from some people's drafts here.
No, it's very true because some people do, Tad. I don't know if you ever participated in this one, but they do a slow draft. So then what happens is that every pick you get like 4 to 8 hours, and then it shuts down from like, I think like 9 p.m. until like 9 a.m. the next day. So then it doesn't go overnight and all this stuff. So then it gives you time to sort of like make your draft picks, and then it sort of just goes on for like a month or whatever.
A coworker of mine is in a dynasty league where they do their draft at like post-draft, like post-NFL draft.
Right.
And it was funny because he texted me or called me. I was sick at work that day, and he called me at like 11 a.m. on a Tuesday and was just like, who do I draft? I'm like, who is drafting at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday in April? And then I asked him that when I got back to work, and he told me that the way his league does it is the next pick up does not come up. You have 24 hours to draft. And let me tell you, the amount of succession level shit that I heard goes down in between those picks is insane. Like there's backstabbing, there are trades that like fall through. It is absolutely insane. Like the amount of drafting variety out there is truly crazy.
Yeah. I remember one year because I couldn't get everybody set on the same draft date. I was like, all right, I've done this before. How about we do an email draft? So then everybody's part of an email thread, and you just have to update who's on the clock, and then you just email in your pick into the same thread, and then I just kept track of everything. Not a very likely, like not a method that I would recommend, but it was something that we did. It did get through it, but just, it was a little annoying for sure.
Too much potential for just corruption. Just No, I don't trust. Look, I love every single, I really do mean this. I love every single person in my league. I don't trust a single one.
I think so for me, it's just
to give them 24 hours for a draft pick. Absolutely not.
I think for me, it's just like, there's just a lot of like coordinated with people because as the commissioner, it was like, all right, hey, you're on the clock. And then they're asking like, oh, who wasn't taken? Then I have to provide them like, go check the email thread. These are the people and then all this stuff. And then they said to person, I'm like, oh, this is the person I want to draft. And I'm like, no, they're already taken. Why don't you look at the damn board, dude? And so it was just, email draft, not something I recommend at all. But there are people that do the slow draft as mentioned, but we'll get into all of that a little bit down the road. We usually like to talk about different draft leagues and just different
What is it? You need to explain Vampire League to me again. See, I didn't flinch that time. He jumped back down. I didn't flinch that time. But we'll get
Cat
into
seems to
that.
have
But
some interest in the Vampire League, so yeah, we'll definitely cover that a little bit down the road.
notice how he drops down like a vampire the
Exactly.
second it happens.
You can only see his shadow and stuff.
Let
Yeah,
me
exactly.
let me tell you, in the morning when he's like biting on my ear, I feel like I'm living with Dracula.
Exactly. But yeah, as mentioned, we usually like to discuss different types of leagues and different types of settings and different things you could do to sort of make your league a little bit more different than your standard cookie cutter mold. But like I said, we'll touch on that a little bit later down the road. But yeah, 100% we want to continue on with our head coaching series. As mentioned, we're going to be talking about Tad's team here, the Indianapolis Colts, and new head coach Shane
Damn it, I
Steichen.
should have worn my Colts hat for this. That was a mistake.
Yeah, that's a bad miss on you, my
I
friend.
don't
But
even
one thing I will
know
pass
what's
over to
bad.
you, like I've done so far in the previous episodes, and this one I think has been probably will get more of a genuine reaction here. Just what were your thoughts when Shane Steichen was hired? Like, I mean, obviously you saw his success with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's just like, did you feel like that's good? Like, obviously he was hired before the selection of Anthony Richardson. So I mean, just like, how did you feel he was going to take on this offense and hopefully, bring back the Colts to be competitive in that division?
My gut reaction was hesitant because
Sure.
I'm being a massive hypocrite when I do that because it's the same thought logic of going back to like CJ Stroud's draft outlook when people were like, well, none of the other Ohio State quarterbacks have worked out. Why would this Ohio State quarterback work out? And that like logic train just doesn't follow. But I kind of did the same thing of like, well, the last Eagles offensive mind we hired didn't really work out. So why would this Eagles offense? But that's not fair to Steichen. So that was my initial instinct. And by initial, I mean like for the first day. But then the more I thought on it, I was not a Jalen Hurts believer at all going into the season. And he absolutely killed it this past season. So the more I thought on it, the more I was like, you know what? I like it. Especially because, and we'll get into this, his style of offense is clearly the style of offense the entire league is moving towards. So I'm not saying I'm about to do speaking of the draft, I'm about to do the whole like Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson thing.
Okay.
I'm not saying I expect this level of success, but I am saying it does remind me a lot of what the Rams saw in Sean McVay. Like this is the way the league is moving, of like this is the new offensive scheme that's going to work and we're getting ahead of it. So the more I sit on it, the more I like it. Do I like as you mentioned, the certain quarterback that he selected to run that scheme? No, and I still don't.
Wow.
You say, wow, I literally walked off the podcast.
I know that, but just like,
drafted him.
We'll get into this, but it's like, I have a very differing opinion. So we'll definitely discuss it later in the
wrong.
episode.
And you are horribly wrong.
All right.
But
all right.
I really like this hire. Yes, it was gutsy. If it doesn't work, I'm not going to like go back like 3 years from now and be like, oh, how dare we do that? Like, look, like I said, his scheme is going in one way or another, whether it's him leading the charge or someone else, that RPO scheme is going to be the future of the NFL moving forward. And this was a good calculated risk to be like, we're going to be one of the leaders in that charge. So I like it. It's a risky hire for sure, but I do like it.
All right. So let's definitely dive into the hire that is Shane Steichen. Let's sort of jump into his background here before we jump into his philosophy and his scheme, and obviously some players that will benefit on a fantasy aspect from this new system. So he played quarterback for the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, for 4 years. So he was a 4-year quarterback there. Unfortunately, he was never really the starter. He was primarily a backup, but he did have one solid performance his senior year. He came in to replace the starting quarterback at the end of the first quarter against a game in New Mexico, specifically, I guess I should say there. He went 18 for 30, 295 passing yards, and 5 touchdowns. Fortunately, he also threw 2 interceptions, but clearly this was his best game during his entire college career. I looked it up, and yeah, it was clearly his best game there. Unfortunately, he didn't lead him to a win. It was a loss still against New Mexico, but he did have a really good performance in his senior year there.
Real quick, do you want to know any impressive UNLV players on that roster?
I looked at that roster, and there was really just...
You're ruining the joke. Shut up.
I'm sorry. But yeah, there's nobody that I saw that was like, okay, this guy stands out to me as like, okay, he turned into something. Or
the joke was going to be there are none, which makes their performance that much more impressive. Because there were 2 NFL players on that roster. I never heard of either one of them.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I didn't go that far. I was just looking at the roster. And I was like, do any of these names sound familiar to me? And I was like, No, unfortunately.
No, I looked up the 2 NFL ones. They washed out in like 3 years.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to play in the NFL. He went straight into coaching right after that. So he was a graduate assistant for UNLV from 2007 to 2009. Then he
Also,
left.
sorry to interrupt you one last time, but random fun fact: the current UNLV defensive coordinator broke my back in high school.
Oh, and his name
How about
is
that? Mike Shear.
Mike Shear. Okay.
Mike Shear.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So from 2007 to 2009, he was a graduate assistant at UNLV. Then he spent 1 year as an offensive assistant with the University of Louisville. That was in 2010. Then he makes the jump to the NFL. So pretty short college coaching career. He just made the jump right to the NFL there. He joined, at the time, the San Diego Chargers. This was when they were making their transition between San Diego to Los Angeles. So he was there for the 2 seasons where it was a final season in San Diego, and then it was the first season in Los Angeles. So that was from 2011 to 2000.
Good time to jump in there.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. You're part of the old, then you're part of the new there. So yeah, so he was there from 2 seasons only, 2011 to 2012. Then he took an offensive quality control job with the Cleveland Browns in 2013. Then he came back to the Los Angeles Chargers, and that's where he spent a good portion of his career there. He was their quarterbacks coach from 2016 to 2019. 2019 was also pretty significant because the Chargers had fired their then offensive coordinator, Ken Wisenhunt, mid-season. I think it was the very last week of October, and then they named Shane Steichen the interim offensive coordinator for the rest of that season. He did a pretty good job because he was able to keep the job. They named him the offensive coordinator in 2020, and then he was only the offensive coordinator for 1 season because then his former colleague, Nick Sirianni, made a call to him, and he joined the Philadelphia Eagles, where he became their offensive coordinator for 2021, 2022. This is where obviously he found his most success. In 2021, this is famous because Jalen Hurts was named the starter after Carson Wentz was traded to the Indianapolis Colts.
We don't discuss that. No, we don't discuss that. That never
look at that move as not very great. I don't know what
you're talking about.
Terrible.
hey, at least we didn't lose a first-round pick to it. That's all I'm saying.
That is fair. That
dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, that makes it a lot better. That didn't happen.
It was like
there,
Neo Matrix level shit. Like,
yeah. Whew. Yeah, so that was not bad there. But yeah, so Jalen Hurts was named the starter for the 2021 season. And Steichen was very instrumental in helping develop them, because one thing I forgot to mention here, Tad, is that in 2020, when he was the offensive coordinator for the Chargers, that was Justin Herbert's rookie season. And the Chargers offense had the 6th most passing yards in the NFL, and they had the 10th most passing touchdowns. So he was able to get that. I mean,
31, by the way. That's the 10th most. It was 31 touchdowns as a rookie. A rookie.
And I know Justin Herbert came in with a high pedigree, so we kind of expected that. But still, you still have to get that out of your rookie quarterback, because not everybody makes that transition as successfully in their first year. But yeah, for Steichen to sort of help Herbert get to those levels in his rookie year, then obviously he has developed off of that. Like, that's saying something for sure for Steichen. So yeah, now he comes to Philadelphia, charged with doing a very similar thing with Jalen Hurts, where it's like he wasn't in his rookie year. This was his second year, but he barely played his rookie year. So it's essentially, this is his like rookie year, his second year, right? If this was MLB, this would be his rookie year, because he didn't have the minimum service time or whatever they call it, right?
or like the NBA, because I remember being so confused by this at the time. Do you remember when Blake Griffin got rookie of the year, or was at least in the running for rookie of the year? And I'm like, but he's not rookie. And all my friends try to explain this to me. I'm like, no, you are not a rookie if you miss, like, if you played some of that first year. Like, that was bullshit. But Blake Griffin,
I don't remember Blake Griffin, but I remember this was the argument with Ben Simmons, because he then ended up winning the award.
Blake Griffin had the same thing, because he like broke his leg or something like with his first year.
I remember it was
Ben Simmons is a great example as well. Yeah,
that's the one I remember. I was like, Ben Simmons, like, does he deserve it? And that was the big talk.
Both are equally bullshit.
Exactly. So yeah, very similar. This is pretty much Jalen Hurts in his second year was pretty much a rookie year there. So Steichen led this offense to having the 12th most points scored in the league, had the 5th fewest turnovers in the league, and they had the most rushing yards, which also set a franchise record with 2,715 rushing yards. And they also had the most rushing touchdowns, in the league as well in 2021. So pretty good numbers. Now let's jump to last season in 2022, where I think he improved in some areas as well. Obviously, the team was representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they weren't able to come away with the victory, but they held their own against Kansas City, and they were able to keep up in that sort of track meet style of offense. Game that it was, where just like both teams were just scoring each time, every single way. So he was able to keep up with Kansas City's very potent offense as well. So that definitely says something. But as far as the regular season is concerned, they had the second most points scored in the NFL, the second most total yards gained in the NFL, fifth most rushing yards, ninth most passing yards. And that's pretty significant because you have to look at Jalen Hurts, where it's more of a running first quarterback. For him to have the ninth most passing yards in the league, that definitely says something as far as like, not only did he make him a gifted runner and that sort of ability, but now he also built up the passing aspect with Jalen Hurts taking that next year. It's like, okay, we got the running down. Now let's start working on the passing. So to see that sort of improvement, that's definitely amazing. You also have to look at the fact that, just like I said, where you see Jalen Hurts' development, he finished second in the MVP voting and also third in Offensive Player of the Year voting as well. So, I mean, you have to definitely give a lot of credit to Steichen to sort of taking what Jalen Hurts is good at, definitely taking what the roster is good at, and getting the most out of that to get that very successful sort of season that they had. That's, of course, very high commodity out there, the coaching ranks there. So he was getting a lot of interviews, ended up choosing the Indianapolis Colts, and he is now their official head coach. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of optimism here with Shane Steichen landing in Indianapolis and sort of, like you said, making that sort of shift to like now this RPO style of offense and being sort of on the ahead of the curve as far as like, maybe where a lot of these offense may decide to start trending in that direction here. So, Tad, I'm just going to pass to you here real quick. I mean, just like, looking at his background here, and just like, I know you sort of spoke a little bit about just how you feel about Shane Steichen, but just like, once again, just hearing everything that I said, like this just give you more optimism, or are you still like a little bit like, let's wait and see exactly what he can do? Because you also have to look, Philadelphia had a loaded roster, like both sides of the ball. It's easily to be successful when you have that type of roster, but it's like now coming to Indianapolis, where it's like you have some pieces, but I think you definitely need to build up a little bit more, fill a few holes, obviously, but just like, are you still optimistic that this guy can sort of take what the Colts have, build upon it, and hopefully replicate what the Eagles have done the past two seasons now in Indianapolis?
100%, because if you go back to 2014, when he was the offensive quality coordinator, whatever bullshit that title is, where basically he was the overseer of the offense. And I got some throwback names for you here. In 2014, San Diego, so they were still the San Diego Chargers at that point, had three receivers, one tight end, but I just count them all as receivers, to reach 50 plus receptions for just the fourth time in team history, for the first time since Eric Coryell. They were Antonio Gates, that's the weird outlier. Yeah, he's a tight end, but he's a receiving tight end.
I gotcha.
Keenan Allen, not that surprising. How about this for two throwback names? Eddie Royal.
Eddie Royal, yeah.
Royal's
I remember he had a sensational rookie season in Denver, and then he just started to go downhill after that. And he had a few flash in the pans. I think with the Chargers, he had one of those flash in the pan seasons for sure, too.
And that was the flash in the pan season, was when Steichen came in. And then how about this? Michael Floyd was the final, or Malcolm Floyd. Malcolm Floyd. Damn it. No, Michael Floyd was the bust for the Cardinals. We're talking Malcolm Floyd.
Yeah, Michael Floyd had a few good seasons too, but then he ultimately fell off the cliff.
So. But Malcolm Floyd was Mike Williams before Mike Williams, like the second fiddle in the Chargers offense. But bottom line is, this offense really succeeded under Steichen, and not just the offense, but specifically the quarterback as well. Phillip Rivers went to 3 straight Pro Bowls while Steichen was there. And on top of that, he also threw for the second most touchdowns in his career, which, by the way, this was surprisingly low, but still good, is when Phillip Rivers threw for 33 touchdowns under Steichen. That was the second most he's ever done in a single season in his career. So Steichen clearly, and we'll touch on this more later, but Steichen has this interesting ability of like the opposite of what I've been saying this entire series of like, I feel like most coaches, I'm like, they do such a good job of adapting to their personnel. Steichen actually doesn't do that. He does the opposite, which is he finds the right personnel to fit his system. He's just really, really good at finding that personnel. You got to do one or the other. Either you got to adapt or, I mean, look at that. Another Moneyball quote. Adapt or die.
Yep.
And so how about that for bad Brad Pitt impersonation? But that's what, like, Steichen doesn't adapt, but he forces the players to adapt to him,
Yeah.
which I really like. So, I mean, overall, like his history is very promising. And again, that's why I've warmed up to this hire pretty quickly. Is that everywhere he's gone, success has followed. Like it's a pretty. It's not like what we were talking about with I already even forgot his name. Steisinger. What's the name of the Cardinals OC?
Oh, Drew Petzing.
Where the hell was I getting Steisinger from?
No, that's what I was like. We're talking about Shane Steichen.
I remember there was a Z. I remember there was a Z in there somewhere.
No, Drew Petzing. That's the offensive coordinator.
It's like Petzing, where you and I both were like, oh no, because there wasn't like a whole lot of track record of like, not saying Petzing's a bad coach, but like there wasn't a whole lot there to be like, wow, that's an up and coming name. He was mainly
a position coach, so it's just hard to see what kind of offense he's going to run. Whereas Steichen has been an offensive coordinator.
But Steichen but that's why I threw out those starter stats though, because it's not actually a position coach, but quality control or quality assistant might as well be a position coach, and you have a track record of success there. So Steichen was much easier to follow through. Like his success was much easier to follow than what's the Strudel's name again?
Drew Petzing.
Petzing. I would buy a Petzing at a Strudel shop. That sounds like a good Strudel. Not racist. But anyway, so my whole point being that Steichen has a clear history of success, and that's what makes this hire much easier to get behind.
There you go. Yeah, when you're talking about like just Chargers throwback receivers, I thought you were going to drop like a Travis Benjamin or a Seyi Ajiro Tutu on me. Like, I mean, I was waiting for those names. You don't remember that one? Yeah, no, I remember that one. He was one of those.
I'm trying to think of other good ones. Who was the guy that always got Vincent Jackson?
Vincent Jackson, BJ.
That's a good one. That's the ultimate one right there.
That's a great one there. But yeah, let's sort of jump into the coaching style that Shane Steichen's going to implement here. So, I mean, we've already touched on it, but this is 100% going to be a main component of the offense, especially with the quarterback that they drafted in Anthony Richardson. The RPO. Like, I mean, you have to look at the fact that last season in Philadelphia, Tad, Steichen called an RPO play on 20% of the plays that they ran the entire season. That was ranked third in the NFL. So clearly, like I said, he made that a point of his offense with Jalen Hurts under center because he knows that he could sort of get the most out of that with Jalen Hurts. So, like I said, they draft a guy in Anthony Richardson, and he's 100% a gifted athlete and dangerous when he tucks the ball and can run with it. But one of the things that he needs to work on is that passing aspect where it's like his decision making, his sort of, timing aspect and like reading the defense. And so like when you're running an RPO offense, you need to be a little bit quick on your decision making, but it's not as, you don't have to scan an entire defense. You don't have to be as pre-snap recognition. Like you have to have those things, but it's not as like, take the ball, you're trying to dissect the defense to try and find the open receiver. It's like you have to make a quick decision, whether it's like, am I going to hand the ball off or am I going to pass it to an open receiver? So it's like you make that decision really quick and then you can sort of move on with the play. You don't have to like sit there and wait like 1 second, 2 seconds, go through my entire progressions where it's like we can make a potential mistake, right? This is just like you make one decision, snap, you either throw it or you tuck it and run with it. So I think this is something you can easily build with the rookie and Anthony Richardson as he continues to develop his read and recognition skills for an entire offense. And then you can sort of get into the aspects of like, going more into being a all-around passer as opposed to just being an RPO passer, right? So I like that. You look at the fact that pairing him up with Steichen, I think that's going to be a gift there for sure. Another big aspect of Steichen's offense, Tad, the explosive plays. And so for a lot of people who don't know what an explosive play is,
this is the aspect to his offense.
Yes.
Not a key aspect. This is the key aspect.
Yeah. So if you define an explosive play is a run of 10 or more yards, or it is a pass of 20 or more yards. So Tad, last season in Philadelphia, the Eagles were second in explosive plays with 97. 54 of them were runs and 43 of them were passes. So definitely, like you said, this is a big proponent of their offense. Now, I already brought this up a little bit earlier, but when you look at that roster that he had in Philadelphia, it's a little bit understandable how he's able to get more explosive.
The A.J. Brown trade makes a lot more sense now.
Exactly. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, obviously Miles Sanders had a very good season. You obviously look at Jalen Hurts and his rushing ability. So I mean, you can understand as to why they had so many explosive plays. So that's why, like you said, it's going to be a big proponent of the offense. So you look at the roster that he has in Indianapolis, he has some pieces. It's obviously not going to be at the same like full cupboard of, potential spices and things that he could work on to build his sort of, meal here like he had in Philadelphia, but he's got some pieces that he can make something work. And then as, he makes a trip to the grocery store and gets some more things, he will be able to make a more complete meal with that offense that he has there in Indianapolis. But like I said, he's got some good pieces there with Michael Pittman. You know how much I love Jelani Woods, but I think he's going to be a really good factor in this offense for sure.
I'll touch on him in a bit.
Okay, all right, we'll get to Jelani Woods. All right, I'm all for that. Obviously, you got your boy JT, Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Hopefully, he can have a bounce back season after an unfortunate, not so great season last year. And obviously, he's got some other pieces. Alec Pierce, they drafted Josh Downs, who I'm very high on in this system, specifically playing out a slot. I think he could benefit from this system too. So the explosive plays, I think, will come. It's obviously not going to be anywhere near that 97 that Philadelphia had last year, but it's going to be somewhere where it's like, as the offense gets more acclimated to this and as they get more acclimated to the style of offense that Steichen wants to run, the explosive plays will come for sure there. So go for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that a big part of this Colts season is we talked last week when we were talking about the Cardinals with Jonathan Gannon is like, look, don't judge Gannon. Just like this year is going to be kind of like, oh, okay, this is what we're going to get. The Colts are like one step above that where it's like, okay, like don't judge Steichen on his success, but more like how well does the system work under new personnel? So like, I still expect a better season than the Cardinals. If the Colts finish first than the Cardinals, 100%. I'll be very upset. But I'm not expecting immediate success from the Colts. But like you said, and like I said as well, it's going to take a while for Steichen to get that right personnel into his system. But I have absolute faith that he can do it. Do I have faith that Chris Ballard can do it? No. Who is the Colts GM? So that's why I hope that that Chris Ballard will be fired as he should have been. And again, I honest to God think that he has been the only man's head I've called for, or man's job, I should say. He is the only man's job I have called for on this podcast. I honestly to God believe that. That's how much I don't believe in Chris Ballard. But with Steichen, it's not just the RPO offense that fascinates me. Well, all right, let me break down the RPO offense first. Is one thing that really fascinates me about that is it simplifies it for the offensive line, which the Colts, good Lord, just give us one healthy offensive line here.
Please. That was a rough thing last season, for sure.
And 2 seasons ago. It's been so long since we've had a completely, fully offensive line. So just as long as they're completely healthy, come on, big guy. But as long as that happens, it's a very simple zone blocking scheme for the offensive line. And this is what I've kind of been talking about with what Steichen does so well is he's very annoying. And so he ran the same RPO set 3 times against the Giants. Do you want to know how many times they lost yards in that series? 3 times straight, by the way. Not like 3 times in the same drive. 3 times, back to back to back. He ran the same formation 3 times. How many negative yards do you think they got?
Probably 0.
0. Here's the better one. You ready for this? They ran the same formation. Now, this wasn't in a row, but it wasn't the same drive. They ran the same formation, which tells you how long this drive was, 7 times against the Packers. Also 0 negative yards. Yeah. So Steichen will just he's unashamed of being, it's like that annoying Madden player where it's like, dude, can you stop doing the quarterback sneak? He's like, no, I'm not going to do it. Can you please stop? It's really annoying. I don't care. Stop it. Like that is Steichen right there. He is the
honestly,
annoying
it's
Madden player.
That whole thing where it's just like, if it's not broke, why would you fix it? So it's like, if this play is successful, go back to it, or this formation is successful, go back to it.
And that's what I love is he doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. He just is doing what is working, which is why his offenses work so well. And one very interesting stat that jumped out to me was Jalen Hurts's passing numbers don't really jump out to you that much. He only had 22 passing touchdowns, but his interception rate actually went down from 2021 to 2022, which was fascinating. So he went from 9 interceptions, just 9. It's not like they were absurdly high either. They went from 9 to 6. This is a very turnover averse offense, which is what I absolutely love. Is they're just like, fuck it, we'll run it down your throw either with the quarterback or with the running back, whichever one works better. Like we said, they're going to test it and be like, okay, our running back attack's working better there. Because keep in mind that Jalen Hurts also had 13 rushing touchdowns. Yes, so just the way he does RPO, it's not I'm not saying it's a bad RPO, but it's not the Ravens RPO where it's extremely obvious what's going to happen. He is much, not sneakier is not the right word, but he is much more intricate in the way that he runs his RPO compared to traditional RPO systems. And so that is a big reason why I think. Now, I'll let you talk for a bit, but I'm about to get in the nitty gritty of the RPO because that's where I have real concerns.
Yeah, and it's actually great that you brought the fact that Jalen Hurts' interception numbers went down from his first year as a starter to his second, because that's another tenet of this offense that I wanted to bring up, is the fact that Shane Steichen is very much a proponent of using the yards after the catch factor in this
Yep.
offense. So what he's going to do is exactly like you said. He's going to run the
He
ball a
pokes
lot.
at you. He annoys the shit out of you. He never, well, I shouldn't say never. He very rarely goes, sorry, you had to know there were 10 interruptions coming this
Sure,
episode.
of course.
But he very rarely goes for the deep threat. He'll do it sometimes,
Yeah.
but he just kind of like pokes at you the entire drive. It's like, are you annoyed yet? Are you annoyed yet? Are you annoyed yet? Are you annoyed yet? And we just scored a touchdown. Like, that is his offense. That's why it's so. I was there for the Super Bowl. Every time they lined up for that bullshit quarterback sneak where he has like the, 300-pound fullback behind Jalen Hurts. Every time my dad was like, they got to stop it eventually, right? I'm like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
And we were like surrounded by Eagles fans. And I made the mistake of being like, they really need to make this illegal. Ooh, man, I've never feared for my life more ever. Like, I thought they were going to like mob kill me. It was bad. But no, but that's his whole thing. It's just like, it's exactly. He just like keeps poking at you until he finds the one opportunity for that deep threat, and then he'll take advantage of it.
No, exactly. So, like I said, that's the one thing I wanted to bring up too. Just the last thing I wanted to bring up with Steichen's offense here is just that, like I said, he is a very big fan of getting those yards after the catch plays. And like you said, just building off those runs. But when he's going into the passing game, I think we all knew that Jalen Hurts, while he was a good passer, he wasn't a great passer. So what did he?
I feel like everybody was shocked at how good he was this past year.
Yeah. So, but the reason that he was so good was because Steichen was able to sort of manipulate this offense to sort of build it off these short, like dink and duck passes. But then he had the right players in his offense. Like you said, they traded for AJ Brown. They had Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert was gifted with yards after the catch as well. So he's throwing these short, like, screen passes, 5-yard slants, these short, quick gainers. But because of the ability that the receivers have, they're able to catch the ball and run with it and make some of these, like I said, we talked about this before, explosive plays where like now it's turning not into a 5-yard pass, now it's turning into potentially a 20-yard pass because the ability of these players are in his system to sort of catch that ball and do something with it, not just catch it and fall over sort of thing, right? And so that's a big thing that also helps the quarterback, because now Jalen Hurts doesn't have to worry about making sure he's hitting this 20-yard deep cut out there on the sidelines. He always has to worry about, oh, this guy's 5 yards away. Boom, I can hit that. Oh, this guy's running a 8-yard slam. Boom, I can hit that. So it's a lot more of easy convertible passes, which can obviously increase his completion rate, which obviously makes him a more accurate quarterback, which gives him more confidence, because then, like you said, when you decide to unlock the top and you're going deep to hit a AJ Brown or Devontae Smith deep, you're able to build on that confidence that you had by just completing like 5, 6, 8 to 10 passes in a row that are just short, and builds up your confidence. That's like, okay, I'm getting into a rhythm now. Then all of a sudden you can hit him deep and you can score a 40-yard touchdown or something like that, right? So that's a really big thing that's part of Shane Steichen's offense well, is that he builds off of that sort of yards after the catch mentality with these sort of, to put it in basketball terms, like these layup passes where it's like you don't have to worry about it too much. You just sort of see the receiver, hit him wide open. He's going to do something with the ball after he catches the ball there. So like I said, those are the three things that I want to bring up with Steichen's offense. And Tad, I'll pass to you, obviously, to sort of fill in any sort of details that you wanted to here. But just, I know they had a stacked roster. Like I said, they had a very stacked roster in Philadelphia. But like you said, I think we're going to see some flashes and potential, like, oh, I see what he's doing here. Once we get more pieces in this offense can take another step and become more similar to what we saw in Philadelphia in 2021 and 2022. But just, once again, it's a slow building process, because obviously you have a rookie quarterback. You have some, younger players. Like, I mean, they're sort of experienced, but they're sort of building their NFL's career too. So it's like, it's a good young mix of position skill players in Indianapolis, not Philadelphia. So I think
don't you put us in the same breath as them.
Sorry.
We are better. We are better. We are classier. We are more storied. We have won more than one Super Bowl this century. Well, we've been to more than one Super Bowl this century. So we're better than Philly. We've never thrown beer bottles at Santa.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of potential to grow as a young unit around each other. They're all going to learn from each other. They're all going to develop together. And I think that's really just a sense of optimism for Indianapolis and that offense. But yeah, like I said, Ted, I'll pass it to you here to sort of just fill in any details that I might have missed or just any other tidbits that you have that Shane Steichen can bring to this offense to sort of research it.
So it's funny because as I was preparing notes for this, Al Rowe's head was in my head, or voice was in my head, being
Of
like,
course.
"Yeah, no shit, Sherlock." And I'm like, "Yeah, shut up, Al." But yeah, you're living in my head rent free. Congratulations. But for those of you who aren't as well versed in football, this is the very basic knowledge of how the RPO goes down, run pass option. For those of you who don't know, but like I don't, and maybe Al could explain this to me because I don't understand how this works so well at the NFL level. I watched 4 games, 4 Eagles games, watching tape on like how this offense works. It is like the very basic of an RPO system, and somehow is working at the highest level of football, where you have the H back, which is, for those of you who don't know, people hear back, they think like, oh, it's a running back or something. Like, no, it's an extra tight end. It's a fancy way of saying it's an extra tight end. So what Steichen does is he puts his H back on the strong side of the offensive line, and then when it's an RPO, whichever side the running back is going to, that H back literally, as soon as the ball is snapped, sprints across the offensive line behind them to go block the unblocked, because the rest of the offensive line is going the other way. So that leaves one unblocked defensive end. And this H back has got to get him out of the way. Not for long, but just, a little bit. I never saw one pancake block of all these tapes I watched. It was literally just and like just kind of get him out of the way for like 2 seconds. But what that does is it forces a linebacker, in the middle of the field to be like, all right, fine, I got Hurts. So that's one guy off the receiver, or that's another guy off the running back should Jalen Hurts hand it off. All depends on how well the H block hits that initial block. So that, again, I know I just explained the very basics of RPO, but for some reason, NFL teams could not figure that out last season. I don't understand the intricacies that deeply to explain how they were not able to solve that. Again, I think it really is because of the personnel. That was the one conclusion I could reach, was just the fact that Jalen Hurts is too fast. By the time you recognize it, you can't catch up to him. Or that he was too smart, which I will get into with Anthony Richardson because I don't trust him to read the defenses smart enough, because that is the entirety of the system right there, is how well can your quarterback decide, I'm going to give it up or I'm going to keep it. But regardless, is the H-back is the X factor, H equals X. It sounds like some bad like 6th grade math problem, but one that I definitely could not solve. But the H-back equals the X factor. So I think that your boy Jelani Woods is actually about to explode as a very valuable player. Standing at 6'7", 250 pounds, this dude is your dream H-back. He is a monster athlete, very big. You basically have a power forward playing tight end for you. So I think that Jelani Woods,
He is a former basketball player.
There you go. I actually did not know that.
Yep.
Jelani Woods, I think, is going to do so well in this system. Also, another player that we both actually advocated for that I think could explode as a result, because if Woods is going to be our blocker, we need someone to keep it. Kylan Granson, I could see kind of breaking out this year as a receiving tight end there. So look out for the tight ends in the Sears system. I think they could have a sneaky good fantasy year.
100%, especially with the athletic ability that they bring. I think it's 100% they're going to be successful. So let's sort of transition into who stands to benefit in this offense. I know you already spoke about Woods and Granson here and the tight end position specifically, but let's get into the conversation here. Let's get into the conversation here, because
let's not.
For me, and I just, like I said, maybe I'm just more optimistic on him than you are, because you're more realistic as a fan.
Somebody take the Kool-Aid away from him?
I don't know, but it's just like, I think Anthony Richardson is going to benefit from this offense. I really do, because I think, just like I said, the fact that Richardson is going to learn under Steichen in his rookie year, well, not his rookie year, but just to begin his career. I think, just like I said, he's landing with the perfect coach to sort of build the system around him and develop him to sort of be successful early on. Now, I list out everything with Steichen's offense, where it's like I said, you got the RPO aspect, you got the explosive play aspect, and you got the yards after the catch aspect, where it's like, this already fits into a lot of what Richardson does well. Now, like you said, his decision-making and his timing could use some work, but I think the big thing there is just with the RPO aspect, he's not going to have to worry about, like I said, I already laid this out before, where it's like he's not going to have to drop back and look through his entire progression and make sure he's understanding the defense is all correct before he sort of makes his decision to either tuck it or make a throw. This, with the RPO aspect, you have to make your decision really quick. So yes, I understand it's still important that you have to understand what's happening with the defense, but that's going to be a lot easier to recognize compared to, like I said, dissecting an entire defense. So that's why I said I'm not saying he's going to hit a home run and be successful right out the gate. I just think that he's going to be able to develop that aspect of his game a lot quicker because he was doing very similar things at the University of Florida. So that's why I think, like, while he still needs the, development and the progression to work on his decision-making skills, I think just his transition to the NFL is not going to be as rocky. It's going to be a little bit smoother. I think Steichen's going to be able to work with him. He's going to be able to sort of work on that RPO aspect of this offense and understand it a little bit quicker. Yes, he'll struggle at times, but I think overall this offense is going to be built around it, that he's going to be successful a lot sooner than, maybe a lot of people would think, including yourself there. So like I said, I'm still a little bit optimistic. I think also you look at the running aspect. We saw what Justin Fields did last year, where it's just like he wasn't able to get the passing game going as much as he wants. So what did he do? He became a running quarterback and he ran for over 1,100 yards. So I can see something very similar happening with Anthony Richardson. So it's like, okay, maybe he makes the wrong decision, but he's such a gifted athlete with the ball in his hands that he'll just turn into a running quarterback then, and he'll get you like 75, 80 yards a game and become a dynamic threat just out of the backfield there. So like you said, the offensive line's not all that great. Maybe he's going to have to scramble more, but like I said, because he's so dangerous as a ball carrier, I think that's going to be a benefit for this offense too. We already saw that with Hurts, how dangerous of a weapon he was on the ground. So I think Anthony Richardson could do very similar things there. And then, like I said, he doesn't need to worry about dissecting an offense. So when you're thinking about the yards after the catch ability, where he's just throwing these sort of, like I said, layup passes of like 5-yard screens or 5-yard outs or, 8-yard slants or whatever it was, that's not easy. That's not hard to sort of pick up. So I think he's going to be able to get a lot of those passes completed. He's going to build up his confidence, and that's just slowly going to help him as he goes throughout the season. So let's turn this to a fantasy aspect, right? So here's a hot take for you, Tad.
I swear to God.
He's the rookie quarterback I trust the most out of this draft class.
You are a moron. You are so dumb.
Like I said, the running factor alone just makes me so much more confident that he's going. Wow, you really think it's that bad? Wow, you, my friend, are just made. I don't know. Like I said, maybe like you said, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid at Anthony Richardson, but just I feel like the things that he's going to bring to this offense, I feel the most confident compared to a Bryce Young in Carolina, compared to a CJ Stroud in Houston. I think just he's going to be able to do more on his own to bring more fantasy points to your roster. Now, I'm not saying you need to draft this guy. He's definitely going to be a bench guy if you're playing in a super flex league or a two quarterback league, I should say. I would trust him as my quarterback too, because of that rushing ability, because of sort of those dink and dunk passes that's going to be able to complete there. So I think I'm going to trust him as the season goes along. So like I said, he is not anywhere near my starting roster if I'm playing in a one quarterback league, but he's a guy like as we were talking about in last week's episode with CJ Stroud as being a streaming option. I 100% like Anthony Richardson as a streaming option, potentially as a second half starter.
You're just trolling me at this point. You're just trolling me.
No, I honestly, like I said, I truly believe it.
My lack of interruptions during that entire spiel is probably the biggest miracle to ever happen on this podcast.
Well, okay, for those watching us on YouTube, you did see Tad walk off there. Unfortunately, if you're listening to the podcast and you did hear Tad, it's because he stepped away from the microphone.
Yeah, if you heard that slight bump, that was me literally throwing my headphones on my table.
You didn't throw them. You placed them nicely.
Dare you, sir?
You placed them nicely, but yes.
I mean, you're doing me a favor there. But look, here's my biggest thing with Anthony Richardson, because I've definitely said this in private. I don't know if I've ever said this on air before. I am trying to get more positive on my outlook of Anthony Richardson.
Yes.
I'm trying very hard. But after, like I said, studying Steichen's system, my biggest concern is a lot of the system relies on the quarterback's ability. Do I keep the ball? Do I run it? Does the running back run it? Or screw it, do I keep it and then pass it? Which requires a lot of decision-making in about 3-4 seconds. Not an easy task. I am not going to pretend like that is a small order. But that is where Anthony Richardson fell short in literally everybody's draft profile, including my own, was this dude's decision making and his ability to, as you said, my friend, read the defense. It's not great. So maybe Steichen can grow that. And I will say, I said a lot of the same things about Jalen Hurts. So I'm not totally writing Anthony Richardson off yet as a failure. But I am saying I am massively, massively concerned about his ability, despite his ability versus mobility, to succeed in this offense because of his defensive awareness. Let's call it that.
Okay.
So that's why I'm worried. Now, you saying he could be a legitimate fantasy option is nothing short of asinine. Bryce Young has a way better veteran offense around him with a coach that has proven that he can work with a smart quarterback. And we have proven as well that Bryce Young, unlike Anthony Richardson for now, is a smarter quarterback. So Bryce Young is the better option. CJ Stroud, and neck and neck with Anthony Richardson. Honestly, like other than Bryce Young, I don't trust any rookie quarterback fantasy wise. But no. Nope. Nope. I'm like Tracy Morgan in that bad Bruce Willis movie. Don't do it. Nope. But here's one Colts player you can trust who I think you can actually capitalize on his draft value because he has lost trust after this last season. Jonathan Taylor is due for an explosion. And sure, he's the boring pick, but I really do think people are going to not let him slip. But let me preface it with this. Do you think it's a realistic possibility in a 10-man league, hypothetically, because we're not psychopaths in a 14-man league, but in a 10-man league, is it possible that Jonathan Taylor slips to the second round?
I don't think so.
Really? Because I actually do think so.
You think so? Okay.
I think people are going to be a little too sleep heavy on Jonathan Taylor. Because what a lot of people do, especially if you're in a league where people aren't like huge football fans, they're going to click on those stats from last year. Not that they're terrible. He had 870 yards, like 4 or 5 touchdowns. So they're going to look at that and be like, oh, this guy's overrated, and then pass up on him. And that's the type of thing I think you can take advantage of. Or even better, if you're mid-first round and you got a guy like honestly, like not that I think he's going to have a bad year, but Nick Chubb is a player I'm not as high on as usual because without Kareem Hunt there, I do wonder how much that will affect his production. I trust Jonathan Taylor more than I trust Nick Chubb now, solely because of the system. Just the way the system, because it's like what I was said before with that RPO system, the defense has got to, on most, if not every play, dedicate a linebacker or defensive back to looking out for Anthony Richardson completely. So with that, that's one less guy you got paying attention to Jonathan Taylor. As long as he stays healthy, that was another thing. It's not like Jonathan Taylor's production just dropped off because he was bad. He just had a bad injury luck year. So if he can stay healthy, he's got one less guy on the defense looking after him. And if his offensive line can stay healthy, they'll go back to what they were 3 years ago, which was, in my opinion, the second best offensive line in the NFL. And all of a sudden we got a recipe for what was his breakout season. So I think Jonathan Taylor is the guy that will surprise people with how far he slips, and you can really benefit off that.
The more I think about it, and obviously we'll get into it as we get closer to the fantasy season, in July or maybe early August too, it's just that if people are going to go more receiver heavy in the first round compared to previous years, like where you get a Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, or Stephon Diggs or something like that in the first round compared to taking a running back, then obviously I can see Jonathan Taylor slipping. I've even seen like possibility that Travis Kelce will go in the first round because of the season that he had last season. So I mean, it's just like,
I feel like Kelce usually goes in the first round.
I think it usually depends on
later first round.
But I've usually seen like second round is when the first tight end goes off the board. It also depends on how many players that you're playing with in your league. Point. So 10-man, I think I could possibly see Travis Kelce going there. So yeah, I could see Jonathan Taylor slipping in the second round now the more that I think about it. But if you're playing in like a 12-man league, then I could see Jonathan Taylor.
That gets a little dicier, yeah. But that's what I mean is like, I'm talking like tail end first round. So, okay, let's assume you get him tail end the first. All right, 12-man league, you get him at number 9. I could see him putting up like, oh shit, I should have gotten this guy at number 3.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I very much like the fit that, Steichen's bringing there, as long as the offensive line, like you said, can stay healthy, then I think I can very much trust Jonathan Taylor again. So that's
the year.
That's the big crux there as far as Jonathan Taylor's success. But 100%, I liked everything that I see from him, especially in his breakout year. Fortunately, it just didn't come to fruition last year, but I very much could see a comeback type of season this coming year. And yeah, people may realize that's like, oh, how come this guy slipped all the way to 9 or 10 when I could have taken him at, like you said, 2 or 3? So very much I could see that type of season happening there for sure. So obviously there's a hot take with Anthony Richardson being a potential fantasy starter there. So, I mean, you see the fact that, we're not going to be your standard cookie cutter fantasy options here. Like, we're going to give you some hotter takes. We're going to give you something a little bit controversial every so often. So best way you could just sort of interact with us. We'd love to hear your reactions to everything that we're saying. You see our social media handles coming down below there. You make sure you're interacting with us on Twitter. You got me at Desai23. You got Tad at Desai94. Got the show handle at the Desai Guys. And of course, we're on Instagram at the Desai Guys as well. So what do you think about Anthony Richardson? Do you agree with me that he could be but the best rookie quarterback in this year's draft class as far as this season is concerned? Do you agree with Tad that it's just like his decision-making skills are going to be too much costly for him and he's not going to be effective at all? How do you feel about us being so high on the tight end position in Shane Steichen's systems? And of course, what do you think about Jonathan Taylor and where do you think his ADP is going to be? ADP, average draft position, for those of you who don't know. So what do you think his ADP is going to be? Do you think he'll go in the first round? Do you think he'll slip into the second round? We'd love to hear all your thoughts on that. So make sure you're hitting us up on social media. Make sure wherever you listen to us on your podcast, make sure you're subscribing there so you can always be up to date with our latest episodes. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the big thing with both the podcast and YouTube is make sure you're subscribing to our host network here, LAFB Network, because they got a lot of great content dropping all summer long when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the NFL level. We sort of talked about the Chargers with Shane Steichen a little bit, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be covering a lot of great content with Justin Herbert and, the new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, and the things they made on defense. Your boy Quentin Johnson, Tad, I'm pretty sure they got a lot of things they're talking about the Chargers.
And Max Duggan.
Max Duggan. Obviously, you got the Rams with all their TCU players and former TCU players that
Tomlinson,
they drafted.
Exactly. I'm missing one. How's D. Winters doing, by the way?
I haven't heard his name too much just yet. But once training camp rolls around,
no news is good news. I'll take it.
Once training camp rolls around, we might hear more about it. But obviously, the preseason game. So yeah, don't hold out too much hope yet. I mean, it'll come, obviously. But yeah, obviously Cooper Kupp coming back from last year. Matthew Stafford, how is he going to look? So they got you covered there. Make sure you check it out, the YouTube, the podcast, and of course, check it out the website with all the great article content there for sure. So guys, to everybody who's supporting us, who's supporting LAFB Network with listening, watching, reading articles, interacting with us on social media, I mean, guys, we really just can't thank you enough.
And look, we mentioned this a couple times already, but in terms of where do I draft this player with your upcoming fantasy football drafts, we have those rankings and the explanations behind them coming up for you very soon. As soon as I get back from 4th of July weekend, we are hitting the ground running on how to best prep you for your fantasy football drafts coming up, whether they be Dynasty, Vampire. My Vampire is currently sleeping in my bed. That's why he didn't make the next drop. But yes, fantasy, Vampire, Dynasty, whatever it is, we got you. So be sure to keep tuning in the next upcoming weeks for your best draft advice. I mean, I think, how far did you get in the LAFB Network league? You got pretty far.
Yeah, I finished third in that league. I finished second in my personal league.
Mm-hmm.
I finished second in another league. So, I mean, I had a lot of top finishes. Fortunately, did not come home with any victories, but just, yeah,
that's further than most people. Exactly. I was a semifinalist in my, unfortunately, I didn't pay as much attention as I should have in the LAFB league, but in my personal league,
I'll change.
Yo, yes, it will. Thank you, Al. But in my personal league, I was a semifinalist this past year, and fucking Antonio Brown. I would have been a finalist if it wasn't for him, but Antonio Brown screwed me out of a title, but I did win a title just 2 years ago as well. So we definitely know what we're talking about when it comes to fantasy football. So that is going to ramp up massively.
Ramp up. We're not talking about Rams right now.
No, we could be talking about the Rams.
A little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So that is going to ramp up massively in the next couple of weeks. So be sure to keep tuning in for that. And if you have any personalized questions, as Amir said, it's going by the ticker right now. Check that out. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, please stay safe.